Welcome to the Grow Strong Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Bell, and I interview business leaders who are committed to their own growth and the development of everyone on their team. If you enjoy my podcast, be sure to subscribe and rate it on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for joining me today. I'm your host, Meredith Bell, and I always love bringing to you people who are focused on their own growth and development and also dedicated to helping bring out the best in others so they are able to achieve their full potential. And that's also the focus of our company. We create books and tools that help people connect more effectively with each other in the workplace. And you can learn more about us at growstrongleaders.com. Today, I'm just very excited to bring a special guest to you. Her name is Marie-France Lechasseur. And Marie-France, I want to welcome you to my show.
Thank you, Meredith, for inviting me.
Well, it's
really happy to be with everyone today.
Thank you. Marie-France is a human resources business partner, and she's also a competency director in learning and development at Michelin. She groups her career experience into three phases that she likes to call 333. And I just love this. It's kind of fun and easy to remember since it's so easy, I think, for us to remember threes. So first of all, she's worked in three countries, France, Canada, and the United States. And she's worked in three types of environments. The first was book clubs and stationery, and then packaged goods at L'Oreal, and now manufacturing at Michelin. And she's also worked in three fields: marketing, learning and development, and most recently, human resources business partner. So Marie-France, thinking about your career, talk about where you have been in terms of some of these positions and roles and where you are today.
It's been an interesting career over time. Never expected that marketing actually would bring me into an HR role. Sometimes things happen for a reason. I ended up still a mission at that time. Ended up being pregnant when I was in Europe and overseas, and they sent me back home in Canada. And something came up during my maternity leave and say, Marie, would you be willing to take your expertise in marketing and bring it to other folks that we want to train when they join the mission environment? And that's how I ended up shifting my career as a marketer into HR, which I never left. So I've been in HR now I've been a mission for over 22 years. And I've been in HR, I would say, more than 12 years now, and live the moment and enjoy every aspect of it.
You know, it's so interesting. Those seem to be very diverse areas, marketing and human resources. And yet I know you've used your skills in marketing in this whole area of being an HR business partner. So talk a little bit about the mindset, the strategies that have really been valuable for you in applying them in a whole different area.
In fact, when we deal in marketing, we look at the people and we use, it's the science of understanding people, in fact. And we look at them, and that's how we define what would be the best product for these type of people based on how they, who they are and what they do and what they prefer. Well, it's interesting when I deal with people and I try to define what would be the best type of training or the best job for them. I do a lot of assessment of who they are as a person. And we always say we need to put the customer in front of us and be customer focused. Well, in my case, in HR, the customer is the employee. And the technique that we use in marketing are exactly the same that we would use, or that I would use in the HR. that I've leveraged over time by doing some research, understanding what is the insight behind the driver or the behavior of some individual. Why do they react this way when we implement a policy, and how do they react to a new policy? Which, when we compare, we launch a product, we say, why would these people react this way when we introduce a new product? It's, for me, the same type of mechanism that we put in place, and I used it, and I still use it every day. In fact, when I ask questions to the employees, I try to put the employee at the center of the conversation, so that I can better help. Because I think the job of a marketer is to help customer, understanding what they really want. Well, in HR, it's the same thing. By asking the right question, you try to understand as much as possible what they really want, in their career evolution, in their daily in their daily work. So, customer focus is what I would say is the primary thing that we need to have. And after that, how you use segmentation, because not everyone is built the same way, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So we have different type of personality. So segmentation is really a good way of addressing the different individual and put them in a cluster when we build programs to support them. Because we try to be as much as possible, and we try to customize as much as possible, but it's not always possible. So we try to build cluster to address a specific segment of people.
You know, that's so interesting. I'm used to thinking of segments of markets, but not so much segmentation in looking at within the group of employees. What are some ways that you change programs that you offer? Or maybe let's back up and look at what are some of the different segments you see within the employee population, and then how do you create programs that address those various segments?
Well, let's use today the millennial, okay, or actually the new generation after Z. There is a new generation now.
And Z. Mm-hmm.
And they are not, first of all, they're not learning the same way at all. I deal with older population because at Michelin, the average time in the company is about 20 years. So we do have people of a certain age versus new employees. And in fact, last week I was in Europe, we were talking about, and I was arguing with some of my colleagues that are slightly older that you cannot keep doing face-to-face training. They want to have something where they can practice right away, and learn when they can, at the moment they are available, so that they can have a coach behind them that's going to help them grow. And I say, therefore, spending 3 days in a classroom is no longer what they enjoy. So we need to be able to balance, and that's what I say, segmentation. We need to be able to adapt and have different kind of trainings based on the population that we're targeting. And some people would be way more comfortable face-to-face, when other requested having everything available on their phone with someone that they can reach out if they have questions. So it's totally different, the same content, but provided in so many different ways. And that's where the notion of segmentation becomes key. Because if I were to offer the same type of training to two different populations, the reaction and the success will not be the same. And that's where the segmentation for me becomes key. And I use my expertise in marketing to say, no, they have different needs, they have different vision, they have different requirements. We need to be able to adapt. And it's easy because the content is the same. It's the delivery that becomes different.
That's such a great point, and an important one, as people are looking at, as you said, just different age groups within an organization, and what's the best way to structure the learning so that it's more likely to have the impact that you're hoping for it to have. I'm curious, once you've provided initial training, is there a difference in the follow-up that's provided with, say, older workers versus younger workers?
The younger worker, they in fact they really don't want to spend too much time learning in class. They want to actually be able to practice by themselves and reach out to someone. Where in the case of someone of a, I will take the what we call the DINK, the double income no kids. It's almost a generation slightly older. Um, they they deep dive and they want to be able to exchange with a group of individual in a defined environment. So their take is more understanding because they have a lot of experience. So they want to know how they can put their experience into the context of what they're learning. And that's where they prefer to do it in class because they want to hear, they want to share what they've done and what they learn over time and how the trainer can help them change some, I don't want to say some bad habits, but some old habits
Mm-hmm.
into something slightly different. Where, again, in a younger scope, they want to see right away what's the big picture. Let me see if I can do it. Um, and I'll come back to you if I have some issues. And a lot of time, in fact, they're looking for tutorial. They don't even come back to me. They say, "Do you have a tutorial? I can do it myself." I, and again, so they request having more tutorial than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the older population not being comfortable with the learning by video, they want to be reached out and they want to be able to express themselves in the classroom. So
Mm-hmm.
it's more consuming, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
for the learn for people in my field because it means that we have to have different type of delivery and also different time of accessibility because one will actually do by chat where the other one will prefer to call.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a different way of adapting. And I think once we understand that, the success rate is way greater.
Yeah. And just thinking of different individual preferences and styles, you may have different populations that say, I want that one instead. So when you can give choices, it really helps address the specific needs of a given individual.
And that's where I learned. Today, I'm more focused on the new division of mission, which is service and solution. We're talking Internet of Things, telematic, and so on. How the tire gets connected, and we. I shouldn't say that, but we give the impression that we offer a choice, you know. But in fact, we build different. I call that the pizza offer. We build different bricks, and based on those bricks, people, and again, that's the type of segmentation, people fall into one of the bricks. So let's imagine, and the way I explain it to people, I say, okay, let's imagine you have a pizza and you do a selection. You have the white sauce and the red sauce. You feel that you're empowered to make a decision of what you want to have. So I pick the white sauce because I like it. Do you want cheese? Do you want meat? And so on and so on. So in fact, we have predefined module and as a learner, they can pick what they prefer based on how they feel and what they want to have, and they feel it's customized to them when in fact it's pre-customized because it allows us to obviously save in time, but
Mm-hmm.
also offering a vermizing by one. That's how in my job I do it today. Pose that into a learning environment that is effecting certain cost aspect, because at the end of the day we still have a budget to respect, obviously.
That's great. Well, I know one of the core elements of that's within your culture is called the Icare model.
Correct.
And I would love for you to describe what that is, how did it get created, and what important role does it play?
So we Mission has deployed what we call the Icare model. It's an acronym. I care for inspiring, C for creating trust, A for awareness, R for result, and E for empowerment. Um, we have started deploying this model about 2 years ago. Um, this model is how we want the employee, the culture of the culture of the company, how we want the employee and the managers um, to be towards each other. Okay, um, behind those, behind this Icare model, we develop obviously training to help the people say what it is to be inspiring, what it is to inspire others. How do we create trust? That will allow us as an employee to grow, and that would allow also the company to project a culture of the type of environment we want the employee that comes to join us um, uh, feel, what its mission all about. So iCare has been really good with the new acquisition. Part of my role as the HR business partner was to work with the acquisition, and we had a few acquisitions in the past few years. And one of the major aspect of instilling the culture was the eye care. They say they understood right away the culture of the company and what we wanted to project as a company.
Mm.
And in fact, surprisingly, I'll be candid here. It has been actually easier for the employees that we acquire than for the employee of Michelin that have been in the company for X amount of years, um, because we're asking them to, in the E of empower and trust, we're asking them to change their behavior, their posture towards employees, where we had been in a top-down organization.
Mm.
Now we're more in a bottom-up organization. So it's been well received, yet it's been a challenge. And hey, I'm a 22 years in the company. Same thing for me. When I say, well, I'm empowered to do that, what does that mean? How far can I go? And how far can I speak up? So, and sometimes you might face an employee or manager that say, well, I don't agree with that type of behavior, when in fact we're actually pushing people to be able to speak up, to express themselves, to be responsible for the result of what they want to do, and be accountable for their results. So it's been quite a journey, but it makes us better as an employee, and obviously better as a manager. That's for sure. Is knowing that we have this model that we can live by day to day. So
I would think that you would have, and you can tell me in terms of the sequence, but you would have needed to get buy in and adoption from leaders in order for them to model and make it safe for people to take on these new behaviors that they're not used to. Is that accurate?
correct, correct. We started. When we say the company is a top down, it's a manufacturing company. Um, uh, Really, I don't want to say really military style, but there was a lot of people coming from the military environment. Um, it started with top down, bringing it down to the manager to the other manager, and to the employees. Um, and yes, as a manager in the company, we had responsibility to ensure that we deploy that model. Okay, so it had been top down. Interestingly enough, after 2 years, it's becoming bottom up. The employees are actually acknowledging managers that are truly I care,
Hmm.
or they are also pointed out managers that are not, being I care, and say, hey, um, you should let me do my job. I understand what I have to do. You do not have to micromanage me. Empowerment is let me be able to express myself. Doesn't mean we have the same opinion. So we're in a situation where actually the employees are bringing up some of the friction
Ah,
And some of the friction that we have with managers that have not done the switch. Everyone has to go by the Icare model. Um, and it's part of our assessment. We have 360 assessment. We have a yearly assessment and like a moving forward together, which is employee engagement within the company. And iCare is the foundation of that model. And if we are not respecting a certain level of achievement, we are being asked to be coach. So be coach and help you as a manager with your team to
mm,
ensure that you develop the iCare model.
mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of support. We do have a lot of support,
That's
but
great.
we do have a lot of resources also to help employees slash managers to
Mm,
grow in that model. Because the strength of the employees, the strength of the company is the employee.
uh-huh.
And Mission understood that from day one. And they feel that we can help us grow and get a better company if we help the employee be a better employee.
That's great. Of course, that's a lot of what I'm all about with my podcast is focusing on companies like Michelin that are that truly understand how critical people are to their success. You were talking about this acquisition, and I'm curious, what was it that made it easier for the folks from this acquired company to adopt the iCare model than the existing team already there?
The companies we acquired were smaller company. I mean, Michelin has over 110,000 employees worldwide. It's, by the way, this model was deployed worldwide. So the culture of a country is different from another country. So having a model that will be deployed and appreciated worldwide is quite a challenge,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been quite successful. In fact, when I speak to my colleague in China, which have a different way of thinking, they understand the iCare model. They understand the notion of result. They understand the awareness and the empowerment. It doesn't mean the empowerment in North America is the same as the one in China, neither in Brazil, but they understand and adapt it to their context of environment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the acquisition, the one that we acquire, were 150 or 200 or 300 employees. It's a small model. It gave them a way of understanding the culture of a company as big as Michelin
Mm-hmm.
and understand, um, first of all, the culture, but what they can be as a company. When you buy startup, they 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 don't have necessarily all the resources in place, and they don't necessarily have a culture yet because everything is such a speed and moving super quick that the notion of putting a culture comes slightly after. I always refer again to marketing at the, the Maslow pyramid. You get at the top of the pyramid when you have, you know, satisfied the first basic foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And having a culture of a company takes a little bit of time, and it's not at the beginning of a company that you're able to do all those
Mm-hmm.
programs. So this program was well appreciated because it gave them a reason to believe,
Yeah.
and also a purpose altogether. So it was the first thing that they really took and say, "Oh, I can recruit with this purpose in mind." It's easy to explain, in fact, that we are a small company inside a bigger company, and that's what we convey as a group.
Mm-hmm. Well, thinking about the fact that they didn't have this established way of doing things necessarily made it easier for them, I would think, to adapt or adopt
Correct.
what
Correct.
you had put in place. So that makes a lot of sense. Well, over the years, I know that Michelin has acquired many different companies. And so when you're faced with really different cultures, like you were just describing, China, North America, you could pick any two
Yeah.
countries. What are some of the things that that have been put in place? Because I'm just thinking of any company, whether they acquire other companies or not, they're bringing in employees, they're bringing in leaders who may be coming from very different backgrounds. And so this whole idea of integration applies in lots of different areas. What are some of the things you've done to make that go smoothly?
First of all, an integration is never easy from both sides. In fact, really never easy. Um, from Michelin, trying to understand the company they acquire. A lot of time we acquire in a field that is not um, we're not familiar, especially that we want to grow.
Mm.
And the tire environment is, let's face it, limited. I mean, there are three or four major big companies, and they are regrouping all together or acquiring other tire companies. So it's becoming a smaller market. So in order for us to grow and face the future of growth, which is telematic and so on, IoT. So where current companies are totally outside of our scope of expertise. So the
Mm.
challenge for most of the manufacturing, I call it, I said the manufacturing tire people talking to these companies has been a challenge. Why do they do that and they don't do that? Well, because their time of reaction is way faster than ours. Why do we take 3 to 5 years, sometimes 10 years to introduce a tire? Depends depends of the tire. If we talk about a tire that is for the mining, it will take about 10 years
Mhm.
to build a new type of tire. A passenger, um, if we're really, really lucky, could take 18 months, but in general, take 3 years. When you are in telematics, coming up with a software, coming up with a what they call the little black box. I don't want to be technical. It takes about 2 months, 3 months. So when we put these two cultures together and say, oh my God, they're not reactive. The first question is, there's no way I can work together. They don't understand the speed to market. So the challenge is for both companies to try to understand each other. And that's where a model like Icare become interesting because it doesn't affect the work. It's all about the personality of the people. And at the end of the day, we're all human. We all have behavioral competencies, and people want to work together. Really, they don't want to work together. See, I've never, seldom, you know, see that people don't want to work together. They want to make it work.
Mhm.
Once we're past the shock of acquisition, they want to try to work, and a lot of time they want to learn from each other. I think what makes it successful, it's when we're willing to put our ego aside and try to understand each other.
Mhm.
Um, and some people are better than others at that, and that's what we face. And I think once we start understanding that no one is trying to steal anyone's job, they're just trying to make it happen. It's unbelievable how it works well. But the challenge of acquisition is never easy. From a small company, they feel that they are basically the David of Goliath,
Mm.
and they don't have a word. When in fact, we a lot of time acquire them because of their expertise. And now we're facing the others at Mission and say, yeah, but they're small, so therefore they should adapt. So we're not going to customize everything based on the acquisition. So my role has been to make sure that we understand each other better and then we can learn from each other and we can merge some of those practices into into a combination of both. So
Mhm.
it's it's not doing acquisition is not easy, but it is really fun because it's a learning. It's really a learning curve uh, for a HR business partner, but also a learning curve for the employees. And what they find a lot of time, a smaller company doesn't have all the resources that a big company would have. So
Mm.
what makes it positive for the smaller company is having access to a learning and development that they couldn't afford,
Mhm.
uh, having access to a HR tool that they couldn't afford, having access to human resources individual that can help them grow in their career.
Mhm.
Which again, when you're a limited environment, a lot of people are jack of all trade. They do in a smaller environment. In a bigger company, you have access to a lot of different resources. So
Yeah.
these are the positive side of what we can offer, or what we can find from a big company to a smaller company.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I think is so great too, this Icare model that you've created provides a common language, a common value system.
Correct.
And the basis of having conversations that are respectful, that allow people to really hear each other out. And I think that an organization that hasn't taken the time to put in place that kind of structure or model is kind of, I won't say blowing in the wind, but they don't have the continuity, the constant to point to and say, this is how we are with each other. And I think that when you face some of the challenges that you were just describing, it makes it easier, or maybe less painful, to be able to resolve those differences because you have this common ground, this common way of relating. Would you say that's accurate?
I totally agree, Meredith. In fact, when we start talking to this company, their reaction would be, that's interesting because you're promoting creating trust, but you don't let us express ourselves and do things the way we think is the best way of doing so. How do we engage so that we can reach an agreement here? It allowed the company, the acquisition, to position themselves and stand to what they believe behind a model. And I would advise anyone or any listeners that they should have a purpose. The company should have a purpose, and the Icare model it's a purpose that we stand behind, and it will also bring a message to when you start to recruiting what the company is all about. How, because more and more, whether we're young or slightly older, compensation is not the only thing that people are actually looking for.
Right.
They're looking to find a company that will respect employee. And when you have this type of model and you can actually showcase this model in event, in different association, it proves what this company is all about and how we want to treat the people and how we want to be treated as an employee. So it is a really good business card for recruiting, but also for engaging employee or any type of company we acquire.
Well, the other thing is, this isn't just a slogan. It's not just an acronym. You live each one of those words in the way people treat each other. And I'd love to hear, are there specific examples? Let's say when you're interviewing a candidate for a job and they ask about, well, what does that look like when you say inspired? Give an example of where that comes into play in a given situation. Can you share just one idea about that?
Yeah, in fact, when we recruit, and even when we do a lot of what we do staffing internally. Okay, and I'm a good example because I'm going to be transitioning into a position in Europe, and my first question to my future manager, in fact, was about trust. Was about trust because I have a way of working. I'm quite independent, and I ask him, I want to be sure that you understand that if you give me something to do, I usually do what I say. How do you feel about trusting me and empowering me? And I give example of how I work. So in terms of even internally working with future manager, we have a bunch of questions, in fact, behind that demonstrate the behavior that we should have. So I used it in my interview with my future manager to ensure that he could actually provide me the right set of answers, also environment. And we use the same externally. Can you give me example of, how when you need to do something, how you inspire people to follow you, how
Mm-hmm.
because you could be put at mission in an environment where you're going to have to work what we call indirect management. So in team, but don't direct report, which is way harder than
Yeah.
managing people directly. How do you get to these people to be inspired, change their behavior to follow you?
Mm.
So I use those type of question in interview to see how if the individual is comfortable or not. It's not given to everyone to be beyond eye care. It's something that you learn. And, I mean, if you're born a natural leader, it's wonderful, but in many aspects, it's pretty rare. You can become a leader through time.
Mm-hmm.
So you can identify where you're stronger or where you are your strength and work with that, and you can also see where the flaws are and help people improve in their weaknesses to become a better employee and a better manager. So while asking those questions, it doesn't mean that you will not be recruited. It tells you this is what we'll be focusing on. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
not comfortable with that, be prepared, because that will be requested. If you're not a team player, part of the Icare model, there's a few behavior attached to each of the letter, and working as a team is a major requirement. Major requirement. So if you're not comfortable with that, you might want to think twice about joining this type of environment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's used as a way of testing the ground, but also indicating what we're looking for.
Yes. I think that's so smart. I just love the examples you gave, and especially with you asking the questions of your future manager, because that helps you see, is this new role going to be a good fit for me based on the environment I'd be walking into? I think
Yeah.
having those questions go both directions is a very powerful way of making sure the right person gets selected for a specific position. So thank you
And
for.
let's face it, Meredith, it was not possible a few years ago. It was not possible a few years ago. And the fact that we introduced this model, we feel confident enough that we can ask a question, uh, and and we can actually ask people and manager. I feel empowered. I can ask a question. So I think it's a huge switch,
Mhm.
and a huge evolution in our culture, which I think is great, really great. And on top of that, I also asked my manager what was his result on his um, employee engagement, because wanted to know where, with who I'm dealing with, and
Mhm.
what's going to be the strength or the weaknesses of the environment I'm going into. So again, it's a huge advancement in terms of the fact that we can ask those questions, and I think anyone should be able to ask those questions.
Yeah.
Uh, Someone who's getting a new interview, coming into the company, should ask the question and say, what type of manager are you? And what are the things that you favor?
Mhm.
And what are the things you consider as being weaknesses? I think people feel that they cannot ask those questions. In fact, they should, because you're going to be, I don't want to say you're going to be stuck, but you're going to be spending about 8 to 10 hours of your time in the office. So make sure that you get an environment that you're comfortable with.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. I think it speaks so well to the feeling of safety that you've created with this model. There are so many other aspects of what's happened with your culture that are indirectly tied to each one of those letters, not directly, just because of the way people are being with each other in the process of interacting. Marie-France, this has been such a great conversation. I thank you so much for sharing what's possible with really big companies, more than 100,000 employees. No one should be discouraged about their ability to make a difference. It takes time, as you said. There are challenges. It's not quick and easy. But I think that the commitment you and the team there have made to looking for ways that you bring this to life. So it's not a slogan on the wall. It's really the way you are with each other that makes such a big
it's a purpose. I know that a lot of people are listening and watching Simon Sinek, but once you have a purpose, and the company purpose is to provide a great environment to work with and for, and Icare provide that type of environment. It's reassuring to see that the company believes in the power of the employees and the power of growing, and it's reassuring to know that the company is investing behind the Icare to support us in our development. I do not pretend to be the perfect manager, neither the perfect employee, but I know I have resources to help me being a little bit more awareness is a good one, self-awareness. In some cases, I know I react in a way, might be better if I react differently. So I've been asked to work on that, and therefore I've been also provided resources to grow. So, and that's what I tell people. Ultimately, at the end of the day, don't take it as a weakness, as something bad on your resume. Take it as being positive, because it means that they're willing to invest in you even more to make you a better individual. And I think that's what the people should be looking at, and becoming a better individual altogether.
That's great. What a wonderful note to end on. Marie-France, tell people how they can connect with you and learn more about the great work you're doing there at Michelin.
Absolutely. Well, for the next few weeks, I'm still in the US, but I think the best way to reach me is through my LinkedIn profile, because this one will not change. The location will change, but I will be reachable through that it's my personal email usually. The Michelin email will not change either. It's just the phone number will not be obviously good in the next, in 3 weeks from now will no longer be good. So I would recommend that if people want to reach, they can either use my business email address or the one on LinkedIn that is available to everyone.
That's great. And we'll put your LinkedIn profile link in the show notes page for you. Thank you so much for being with me today and sharing the great work you've been doing and all your experiences. I admire you and everything that you've done to grow, learn, expand, and incorporate the Icare model yourself. Marie-France.
Thank you. Just for the record, Mary, that I'm not alone. There are a group of people, and I think they should be also thanked for their work. There is a full team, in fact, at Michelin that is trying to help the people develop their skills. So just want to say that I'm not by myself. There is a full team, and everyone is equally, if not more competent than me. So I just want to acknowledge their work as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you. That's a tribute again to who you are.
Absolutely.
And recognizing it truly as a team effort.
Thank you.
So thank you again.
Thank you, Meredith.
And for being with me.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And I wish you a wonderful Tuesday and great afternoon to everyone.
Thanks for tuning into my podcast. Now head over to growstrongleaders.com and check out our 2 books, Connect with Your Team and Peer Coaching Made Simple. While you're there, download the free facilitator guide to find out how to implement our unique peer coaching system. Until next time, I'm Meredith Bell.